I'm Joseph Barr, the Director of Traffic, Parking, and Transportation. Thank you for coming tonight to hear about the progress we've made on our Inman Square study, traffic study. I'll be turning it over to Patrick Baxter, who's our engineering manager, in a minute, but I wanted to say a few words first about sort of the origin of the study and how we've gotten to where we are today. I'll also mention that this is being video recorded by the city's cable TV office, and so we'll be able to make not just the presentation, but also all of the brilliant explanations we're about to provide available online as soon as we have that all edited together. So we'll probably also try to record the Q&A, but that may or may not work out given the room. And it's a little awkward that we definitely want to thank Tom Leslie from CHA for accommodating us in this room tonight, but they're in the middle of an AV upgrade, so we sort of have the podium over here and the screen over there, but we'll make it work. Like I said, we've been working on the study for a little while, and I know some people are sort of impatient to hear where we are and kind of what we've been working on. So we know it's been a little while. We wanted to give you, everyone in the community, an update on the project and the study work that we've done, and then kind of get your feedback on where we're at. So we started the study last summer. VHB, or Van Assing and Russell, is the consultant that's been working with us on this and been doing a lot of the technical analysis. It's part of a larger study that is looking at a couple of different intersections around the city. But this is certainly the biggest piece and the most complex location that we're looking at. And really it comes out of a number of complaints or issues that are raised about Inman Square. There's definitely, we all experience, sort of high delay for all users. So whether it's, pedestrians who have to wait a long time to cross, crosswalks, or cyclists, there's a tremendous line of cyclists, particularly on Hampshire Street, or for cars and buses and other motor vehicles as well. And we also see some existing deficiencies in how the signal operates, and Patrick will get into that a little bit more in detail. But basically, as you all know, it's a very large intersection, and that creates a lot of issues. And some of the solutions we're talking about attempt to resolve that. And there's a lot of, I would say, crosswalks or desire lines through the square where we don't actually have crosswalks for pedestrians. And so we definitely want to try to address that as well. But I will say that, we want to hear from folks tonight as well if there are anything we've missed in terms of the issues or in terms of things we need to address. This is the beginning of a discussion, not the end of it. We've done some study work. We have a better understanding of what the problems are. We think we have a better understanding of what some of the potential solutions might be. But the idea here is not, here's our great plan, don't you love it? The idea is, let's talk about what the thoughts we have, let's talk about the thoughts that you have, and try to come to some solutions that actually solve the problems that are out there. And I guess just with that in mind, I'll also ask, obviously, if you have a burning question and you're like totally confused and need to ask it in the heat of the moment, feel free. But I think as we go through the presentation, there may be some things that you're wondering about that Patrick will answer as he goes through it. So, hopefully we can kind of hold most of the questions till the end, because I think it will be some things will reveal themselves along the way. We maybe all be better off if we kind of hold that until the end. Like I said, if you have something you're just like, I have no idea what you're talking about, feel free to jump in with the question along the way. Just to sort of step back for a second, though, the goals of the study from the outset were, to improve safety. That's really is our first priority in all the work that we do. And the city and the city council, I'll just mention we have two city councilors with us tonight, Jan Devereaux and Dennis Carlone. The city council recently adopted a Vision Zero commitment, which basically commits the city to working to eliminate transportation and traffic fatalities and serious injuries. And so the safety component of what we do is growing more important, and we have a representative from the police department here tonight as well. So that's a key piece of it, trying to improve the operation of the intersection, and really importantly, hopefully simplify it, get rid of some of those long distances, get rid of some of the crossing problems that are there, and add in some of the pedestrian crossings that people want to make. We want to make sure this continues to support the vibrancy of the neighborhood and the business district and all the different stakeholders, including the hospitals that are located, in and around Inman Square. And somebody asked me, the first gentleman who was here tonight asked me, so are you actually going to do something? And I think our goal, and we'll see how tonight's meeting goes and where we go from here, but our goal is to do something. So we're going to get into some, they're not just simple timing, traffic signal timing fixes, which is sort of what we were hoping we might come out of this with, that we could literally, not quite, but sort of do tomorrow, conceptually. But so I think it's a little beyond that. We have some more, complicated ideas, but we still want to keep these within the realm of things we can make happen relatively quickly, and things that will actually benefit folks who live and work and travel in the area in the near term. So, like I said, we're not looking at things that can't happen for 5 or 10 years, and we're not looking at things that cost so much money that we're going to be talking about them for forever and ever and not actually doing them. So our goal is to actually get something done. But before we get anything done, we also want to make sure we've heard from the community as well. So anyway, so that's my overly long intro. So I will turn it over to Patrick to get into the details of the work we've actually done.
Thank you, Joe. So before I start, I know the font size is a little small on that screen. There are some shares here a little closer to the screen, so feel free to move a little closer if you're having difficulty reading. I apologize for that. So just to start off, I'm going to orient you a little bit. This basic map is going to appear on most of the slides. So just to kind of orient you to the study area, this is a map of Inman Square. North is to the up on this diagram here. You can see Cambridge Street traveling east-west across the map. You've got Hampshire Street kind of from the upper left to the lower right, kind of on the diagonal. Then you've got Inman Street, Antrim Street, and Springfield Street coming in. So, one of the unusual aspects of Inman Square, as I'm sure anybody who has walked or driven through it, is it's a very large intersection. It's got 7 legs. Typically we think of an intersection as 3 or 4 legs, maybe 5 legs for an unusual one. So a 7-leg intersection is very large and presents a lot of fairly unique challenges. So just to kind of orient you in terms of the vehicle volumes, we've got about 5,000 cars a day on Springfield Street, about 11,000 cars a day on Hampshire Street, and 18,000 cars a day on Cambridge Street. Antrim Street has 950 cars a day, and Inman Street has about 2,600 cars a day. So it kind of gives you an idea of, proportionally how these streets stand and how much traffic they're carrying through the intersection. There's a very large number of users. We also did include pedestrian and bicycle counts as part of this project, especially during the morning and afternoon peak hours. Close to or as much as half of the traffic on Hampshire Street is actually made up of bicycles. So there's a very large volume of cyclists traveling through here, and that's definitely something that's going to play heavily into any changes and recommendations that are made here. So we did also collect crash data. The data were collected from 2008 to 2012. There were a total of 69 crashes in the intersection within that 5-year window, and that does exceed the statewide average crash rate for a signalized intersection. 15 of those crashes involve bicycles, 5 of those crashes involve pedestrians. Those are definitely the types of crashes we're really looking at to address, because one of the users in that incident is very vulnerable to a crash, and we really have to do our best to try to minimize conflicts between pedestrians and vehicles and bicycles and vehicles. Crash severity, there were no fatal crashes reported during that 5-year window. There were 21 injury crashes, and the most common was an angle crash. So the most common was either a turning vehicle getting struck by a through vehicle, 2 through vehicles, or some combination thereof. So just talking about some of the challenges from the pedestrian routing perspective. So we've got some very long crosswalks through the square here, several places where it might take you 15 or 20 seconds to cross the street, which is something we're always looking when pedestrians in a crosswalk. We want to minimize the length of that crosswalk just to reduce your exposure to a potential conflict with the vehicle. We've got a couple of crosswalks that provide signal control, and then we've got the existing issues with the pedestrian routing. So you can see this green arrow. If you're walking along Cambridge Street on the south side, if you follow the alignment of the crosswalks, you have to walk pretty far out of your way to continue down that street. A pedestrian is going to naturally want to just continue in a straight line and cut off that little U-turn there. And in reality, some pedestrians do choose to do that, which is a safety concern. The other thing that we see is that some of these crosswalks have a very high delay when you're waiting for the walk signal, and that again reduces the compliance. If you have to wait over a minute for the walk signal, you're likely to say, I see a gap in traffic, I'm going to try to run for it. So we'll be looking to, any changes we make, we'll be looking to kind of reduce that delay as much as possible, so that people are encouraged to wait for the walk signal. So the other big challenge for this intersection is the fire station. So we've got 5 garage bays in that fire station next to directly out in the intersection. So any changes to the signal, we have to take that into account. We have to make sure the fire station still has access in and out. The way the signal operates today, the fire station activates what we call a preemption phase. That allows them to safely exit the fire station with all traffic stopped. So if you've ever come up to the intersection when a fire engine was leaving, you'll see the signal will go all red for 45 to 50 seconds. So it's a long time for them to be able to pull out of there safely and maneuver to whichever street they need to go to respond to an emergency call. So that's again something we'll be looking to incorporate in any future designs. So we've got some concerns with the signal controls as well. So if you're coming down Hampshire Street, coming from Somerville, and you want to make that kind of right/through movement to Antrim Street, there's no actual signal control provided for that movement, and it's a little bit of a gray area as to when you're supposed to make that movement. So if you go at the same time cars are coming through from Springfield Street, you generally have that opportunity to go. But if the cars on Cambridge Street have the through movement, there's nothing really telling you to wait for the next phase. And then we also have those two crosswalks there, which are also not controlled by the signal. So the other thing is just the huge geometry issues that are created by what we traffic engineers call skew. So in an ideal world, we're always looking for intersections to be 90 degrees. That minimizes the radius of the curves, it minimizes the size of the intersection, and it creates just kind of expected geometry as you're in a car or a bike or a pedestrian. Come up, you know where the cars are coming from, you know where they're going to. And that also minimizes the size of the intersection. The more the streets have an angle from each other, the more the intersection starts getting bigger just to accommodate the movements that happen there. So in the case of Inman Square, we've got about 270 feet, which is almost the size of a football field, between the stop bars on Cambridge Street and between the stop bars on Hampshire Street. So that creates some operational and safety concerns for all users. There's that concern as you're going through the middle of the intersection, especially on a bicycle, you're coming through there. 270 feet is a very long distance to go when you're just kind of out there. There's traffic moving around, everybody's making different turning movements. The same thing for a vehicle, especially if you're making a turn, you're out there in the middle of the intersection. It's not always clear where should I stop and wait, how do I tell what everybody else is doing. That large, expansive pavement kind of creates a little bit of confusion for all the users. The other issue is the clearance time. So if you're coming, say, eastbound on Cambridge Street, and you go through, the light turns yellow right as you go through, the amount of time it takes you, especially if you were going to make that left turn on the Springfield Street, which is probably the longest distance you could be in the intersection, by the time you get all the way up to Springfield Street and make that left turn, Springfield Street might already have the green light, especially if you had to wait a second for through vehicles to clear. So it's just a little bit of a confusing issue that the vehicles on Springfield Street see a green light, but there's still traffic moving through the intersection. So these are all challenges that are really exacerbated by that very large size. And lastly, we've heard from some people that the lane control on Cambridge Street is a little unclear. So as you come up, the left lane has the straight arrow, the right lane has the right turn arrow, and whether that right turn arrow means you have to turn on Springfield Street or that means Springfield Street or Hampshire Street, I think every driver will give you a different opinion on that. So that's another issue that's kind of created by that large size. So I'd like to talk a little bit about desired outcomes. So we're looking at a couple different options for what we can do with the intersection to kind of rectify as many of these issues as possible. So we want to make sure that we're improving the intersection for all users. So for pedestrians, we're looking for, wherever possible, we'd like to improve sidewalks. We'd like to expand open space if possible, provide more crossing opportunities, and reduce the length of those crossing opportunities. For bicycles, we want to reduce exposure. We shrink the size of the intersection, we reduce the amount of time you're out there and have the potential to have a conflict with a turning vehicle. And if possible, we'd love to provide options for separated facilities as well. For vehicles, we'd like to reduce unnecessary delays at a very large intersection. Again, creates that extra time you have to wait for vehicles to clear. Smaller intersections, the vehicles that clear the intersection faster, we're able to cycle to the next phase. And through that method, we're kind of almost creating time. So we've only got so many seconds in the hour to process vehicles through there. The fewer seconds we have to spend on leaving all the signals red while people clear out, the more efficient we're able to make the intersection operate. We're also looking to provide clear guidance and lane control so you know which lane to be in as you approach the vehicle. And you also, when you see another vehicle, you know when to expect. Is that vehicle turning? Is that vehicle going straight? So we're looking at kind of two different ideas here. So I'm going to kind of walk through each of the ideas and then the major changes that go with them. still at a very schematic stage right now, so you're just seeing lines on a map. So the first idea is to, I'm using the word bend Hampshire Street here. And so what we're looking to do is kind of create a more normalized, as I mentioned before, we like the idea of a 90-degree intersection, more compact intersection geometry. We also like four-way intersections better than seven-way intersections. So the idea is we take Hampshire Street and we bend it around to create two separate intersections with Cambridge Street. So you're kind of eliminating that section in between and creating two four-way intersections that are relatively close together and would be operated under signal control as it is today, but with different phasing and different operations for those signals. This would create more compact intersections, which again reduces that exposure time for vehicles, reduces it for bicycles, reduces clearance times, and reduces crosswalk lengths. This has a pretty significant opportunity for open space. You see that little blue area at the corner on Hampshire Street there, formerly a road. That's an opportunity for a plaza or some sort of pedestrian environment in front of the shops there. This will be two traffic signals. They operate as kind of a single unit, but there will be two separate intersections. So as you drive through, you're going to encounter a signal for Hampshire Street, Cambridge Street, and Antrim Street, and then there's also a signal for Springfield, Cambridge, and Hampshire. Those signals operate together, so you're not going to be in a situation where you're running into two red signals on the way through the intersection. More crossing opportunities. So each of these orange arrows is a potential location for a new crosswalk. You can see the crosswalks are shorter, they're a little more frequent, they're a little more aligned with where you'd like to be walking as you go through the intersection. And again, as I mentioned, the signal control would be designed for continuous movement. So as you're coming down Hampshire Street, you're going to have to make a left onto Cambridge and then bend a right back onto Hampshire. But that would all be controlled as a single movement, so you're not going to come down, get a green at the first one, and then a right at the second one, and have the traffic congestion come with that. The same would be true for Cambridge Street moving through the intersection. The one issue we've identified with this concept that will require a little more review is the bicycle movements. So the bicycles coming up Hampshire Street outbound or coming down inbound will have to make their first entrance in the intersection will be a left turn. So we need to really think about how that movement's going to work and how that's going to interact with vehicles that are making similar movements. Our traffic information does show the vast majority of cars on both Cambridge Street and Hampshire Street are going straight through the intersection with relatively few turns, and we do notice that some of those left turn movements are illegal as well, so that kind of helps some of these situations. So the idea number two is to take that first idea and just kind of turn it on its head. So we said, we first looked at bending Hampshire Street around to Cambridge. So then we looked at, well, what if we bend Cambridge around to Hampshire Street? So again, similar concept, we bend the two street approaches around, so we're creating two separate intersections. We've got a little more opportunity for open space in this concept because in the first concept, some open space was created in front of the fire station, but that would all have to be designed so that the fire vehicles are able to drive right over that. So this would create the two different open space areas you see on the map here. We again have two traffic signals. They operate very similarly to the previous concept.
Can I ask, what happens to Springfield Street here?
So I'll get to that in a minute. That will require some operational changes to Springfield Street that we're still going to be looking at and considering various different options for. And then again, you've got the multiple new crosswalk locations and traffic flow would work in a similar nature. Traffic on Cambridge Street would have to make a right into the intersection and then a left out of the intersection to continue along that alignment. But that would operate all as a single phase. So once you get a green at the first signal, you receive a green at the second signal to continue through there. So that will require operational changes on Springfield Street. So we're going to have to look at a couple different options to see how vehicles get in and out of Springfield Street, or it may be necessary to convert it to one way into the intersection or one way out of the intersection. That's something we're really looking at. The other approaches are already one way away from the intersection, but any changes there, consider access for the businesses, access for the residents. We also have to coordinate with the city of Somerville because it's only about maybe 200 feet off the road there to the city line. So next steps, we're here tonight for discussion with the community. We're looking to hear from all of you. We're looking to hear from people who aren't here tonight. So if you go home and you're talking to your neighbors or business owners that weren't able to make it, this presentation will be available online. We're looking for comments. Give us a call, send us an email. Tell us what you think. If you have ideas, if there's issues we missed, if you have ideas that we haven't mentioned tonight, we'd like us to look at. We can definitely consider those. We want to hear from everybody and figure out, kind of what works best for the neighborhood, what works best for the business owners, the residents. We have some ongoing coordination for one of the, at least one of the concepts. We may have some changes that would impact the city of Somerville, so we'll have to have a conversation with them. We'll be having a conversation with the fire department to make sure we meet all their needs in terms of access in and out of the fire station. We'll be looking to identify funding opportunities to pay for all this. And then, assuming we have a consensus we're able to develop over the summer, we're going to start looking at fall 2016 and start going forward with some design efforts and moving this project forward. So with that, I'll open it up to